The first sign wasn't the missing car. It wasn't even the silence. It was the smell. Our house never smelled like citrus before. Madison hates citrus candles. Says they remind her of cheap motels. But when I opened the door that night, the whole living room was glowing with the fake orange scent of something I didn't buy, with the wick burned halfway down like someone had been home long enough to enjoy it. Except she wasn't home. And her last message, sent 2 hours earlier, was a casual, "Going out. Don't wait up." No explanation. No who. No where. Just gone, like I was a doormat that sends read receipts. I walked upstairs and found the second sign. The closet door slightly open, one hanger on the floor, and the dress she swore she'd never wear again missing. The one she bought the year she and her ex broke up. The freedom dress, she called it. The one she claimed she kept only because it's expensive. Elliot, relax. Then my phone buzzed. Not from her. Of course not. But from a friend of a friend who happened to be at the same event. A photo. Blurry, badly lit, but unmistakable. Madison, at her ex's party, holding a drink like it belonged in her hand, laughing like nothing at home mattered. I swear my knees actually went weak, like in those dramatic movies where someone gets tragic news and collapses. Except I didn't collapse. I just stood there like an idiot with my keys still in my hand, realizing she hadn't done this by accident. She wanted me to see it. She wanted me to hurt. And the worst part? I kept checking the door every 10 minutes anyway, like some pathetic golden retriever waiting for a treat that wasn't coming. By 3 a.m., I'd stopped pacing and started thinking. By 5 a.m., I'd stopped thinking and started planning. By sunrise, I wasn't the same man she walked out on. And when Madison finally came home, hair messy, voice raspy, eyes too bright for someone who just hung out, the shock on her face when she saw what I'd done, she earned every second of it. Madison didn't even notice what I'd done at first. She walked into the house like someone returning to a hotel room they barely remembered renting. Her heels clacked across the floor, her bag hit the counter, and she let out this exaggerated sigh like she'd spent the whole night solving world peace instead of dancing at her ex's place. Her mascara was smudged, her earrings mismatched, and her hair had that messy, windswept look that had absolutely nothing to do with the weather. She didn't smell like the citrus candle burning in the living room. She smelled like someone else's cologne, a scent I didn't recognize, a scent that didn't belong in my home. She didn't say good morning. She didn't say sorry. She didn't even pretend to care about my feelings. Instead, she opened the fridge, grabbed the last bottle of sparkling water, the one I was saving, and asked, "Why are you staring at me like that?" As if she couldn't imagine a single reason a husband might be upset that his wife spent the night at her ex's party after telling him not to wait up. But here's the thing. The old me would have cried or begged or demanded answers. The version of me she expected, the soft, apologetic, self-blaming version, would have asked her what he did that made her laugh that hard. I didn't ask anything. I didn't even look at her. I let her talk to the back of my head while I wiped down the already clean kitchen counter with the kind of focus only heartbreak can give you. Then she finally saw it. The stack of documents on the dining table. The missing picture frames. The empty drawers. The small, neat suitcase at the front door. All arranged with the precision of someone who had been awake all night, thinking too much and feeling even more. "Elliot, what is this?" she asked, her voice cracking just enough to let me know she didn't expect consequences, just mild annoyance. I told her the truth, calmly, almost too calmly, that I couldn't keep living in a house where I was treated like a background character in her personal drama. That her choices, whether she wanted to admit it or not, changed something in me. That staying out all night at her ex's party wasn't blowing off steam. It was a message, and I heard it loud and clear. But that wasn't the part that stunned her. She walked into the bedroom and saw the real shock. The walls on my side cleared, my nightstand empty, my clothes gone, even the framed photo from our honeymoon removed. It looked like someone had scraped half the marriage off the surface of the room. She whispered, "You're leaving me?" Like I'd suggested something absurd, like she couldn't believe I would dare to react to her betrayal. She looked offended, confused, almost insulted that I wasn't crying at her feet. But I wasn't leaving. Not yet. I explained, slowly, deliberately, that the suitcase wasn't for me. It was for her. I'd packed everything she normally tossed around the house. Her chargers, her favorite hoodie, her weird collection of lip balms, the sleep mask she insisted she couldn't rest without. All waiting at the door. I told her she needed time, somewhere else, to decide what exactly she wanted this marriage to be, or if she even wanted it at all. Because if she could sleep at her ex's house without guilt, she could sleep somewhere else while I figured out if my heart still had room for her. She didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. And for Madison, 10 seconds of silence was an earthquake. Her face fell, not out of sadness, at least not at first, but out of disbelief. She wasn't used to me drawing lines. She wasn't used to me having any power in the relationship. And she definitely wasn't used to coming home after crossing every boundary imaginable and finding that the consequences were already waiting for her. The stunned look she gave me will stay with me forever. It was the moment she realized the version of Elliot she could walk over wasn't standing in front of her anymore. And the version she got instead? She had absolutely no idea how far he was willing to go. Madison didn't leave right away. She stood in the doorway, frozen, like she expected me to suddenly backpedal and tell her it was all just a bluff. That the suitcase was symbolic, that I was being dramatic, that I'd beg her to stay the moment she reached for the handle. But I didn't move. I just stared at her like I was looking at a stranger who used to live in my wife's skin. That's when she dropped the act. "Is this because I didn't come home on time?" she said, voice dripping with forced innocence. "You're seriously kicking me out over one night? Elliot, you're being ridiculous." That word, ridiculous, it cracked something inside me. Not because she said it, but because she believed it. She truly thought I was overreacting. That her disappearing act, the smudged lipstick, the silence, the smug entrance, none of it mattered. That I was supposed to swallow my pride like I always did and let her reset the board with no consequences. But she didn't know I already knew everything. While she was off getting drinks with friends, I'd been sitting in the living room with my laptop open and my pride in pieces. I'd scrolled through tags, stories, old posts. At first, I just wanted to know if she was actually at Cody's place. That was the excuse, right? That she was going to his party. Nothing serious, just catching up. Except I found a photo. Not on her page, of course. On his. Buried in a carousel of blurry late-night chaos. Her face. On his shoulder. His hand on her leg. The exact same smirk she used to give me when we were still new and in love. That half-teasing, half-possessive smile like she was daring the world to interrupt her. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was a comment from one of his friends, some guy named Trent, I think, that read, "Glad to see you two finally picked up where you left off." And Cody replied with a winking emoji. My heart dropped so hard I thought I was having a panic attack. I saved the post. I took screenshots. I even recorded my screen. I needed to know it wasn't a dream. I needed to remember how it felt to be treated like nothing. So when she tried to walk past me that morning like nothing happened, like I was an overreactive fool with abandonment issues, I calmly pulled out my phone and opened the photos. I held it up to her face. No words, just evidence. Her eyes went wide. She tried to laugh it off. "That's just how Cody is," she muttered. "He's always touchy. You're making this something it's not." I said nothing. She tried again. "He posted that without asking me. I didn't even know he took that picture." Still nothing from me. Then she got angry. That fake kind of angry that people use when they know they're caught, but haven't figured out how to spin it yet. "Oh, so now you're stalking his page? Seriously, Elliot? You're pathetic." I stayed calm. I told her that if I was pathetic, I learned it from loving someone who stopped respecting me months ago. I told her that I wasn't asking for an explanation. I wasn't even asking for an apology. I was asking her to leave, just for a few days, so I could figure out how much of my life I was still willing to give to someone who treated me like a backup plan. She stood there, fists clenched, eyes glassy, lips trembling, not because she was sad, but because for the first time in our marriage, she wasn't the one in control. She walked out without taking the suitcase, slammed the door like she was the victim, like I'd hurt her, like she didn't spend the night in another man's arms while her husband sat awake wondering if she was even alive. I didn't follow. I didn't text. I just locked the door, turned off the candle, and for the first time in 6 years, sat alone in my house without feeling like I was holding my breath. But the silence didn't last long, because 12 hours later, her sister called me. And what she told me, it changed everything. I didn't answer right away when her sister, Kendra, called. Honestly, I thought it was Madison calling from a different number to try and guilt me into talking. I almost let it go to voicemail. But something told me to pick up. Maybe it was instinct. Or maybe I was just exhausted from pretending I didn't still care what happened next. Kendra didn't waste time. No greetings. No small talk. She just asked, "Is she with you?" I said no. She wasn't. She had stormed out earlier that morning with fake outrage plastered on her face, convinced I'd come chasing after her like I always used to. But I didn't. And I wouldn't. Kendra let out a long, shaky breath like she'd been holding something in for way too long. Then she said it. She told me she was going to do it. She said she wanted to remind you how it feels to lose. I thought she was being dramatic. I didn't think she'd actually go. My stomach dropped. Go where? To Cody's. To his party. She told me she was going to spend the night there just to mess with you. That she wanted you to panic. To shake you up, her words, not mine. I couldn't breathe for a second. The idea that this wasn't just a reckless decision or a moment of weakness, it was deliberate, planned, weaponized. That crushed something in me I didn't even know was still intact. I had already suspected it was on purpose, but to hear her own sister confirm it, it made everything feel colder, more strategic, crueler. I warned her, Kendra continued. I told her she was playing a dangerous game, but she just laughed and said, "Elliot needs to remember I have options." Options. Like a marriage is some sick marketplace, and I was the guy clinging to her sale tag. Kendra said Madison hadn't responded to her messages since that morning, and she was worried something had gone wrong, not physically, but emotionally. She thought you'd fall apart, she said. But I think she's realizing she miscalculated. I thanked her and hung up, but I couldn't sit still after that. My hands were shaking. Not from sadness, not anymore, but from something deeper. A rising sense of clarity. Like I had been walking through fog for months, and suddenly everything was sharp again. I started going through our shared accounts. The ones we had been meaning to separate eventually, but never got around to. I found hidden payments to a hair salon she told me she couldn't afford. A secret Venmo transaction labeled cocktail glass kiss mark woman dancing, sent the same night as the party. I checked our shared calendar. She had a note marked therapy the week before, which I'd supported her going to, but the location was nowhere near a clinic. It was a hotel address. It just kept unraveling. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd been erasing me behind my back while keeping me close enough to serve her emotional needs. By the time the sun had set, I had already called my bank, froze the joint accounts, forwarded all bills to my name, and changed the security system passcode. I wasn't being petty. I was reclaiming what little of myself I still had left. That night, Madison finally called me. 5 missed calls. Then a long message I didn't play. Then a single text. "We need to talk. You're blowing this way out of proportion." Proportion? I stared at the text for a long time, like it was written in another language. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I didn't reply, and 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. When the doorbell rang, I already knew it was her. She had this pattern: storm out in anger, come back with charm, try to flip the narrative before I even had a chance to hold on to my own version of events. I didn't rush to answer. I let her stand out there for a full minute, maybe more. I wanted her to feel it, the shift, the silence, the lack of obedience, the absence of fear. I wasn't the man she could steamroll anymore. When I opened the door, she wasn't in shambles like I thought she might be. She was dressed to perform. Tight black sweater, perfect makeup, eyes too wide with concern to be genuine. Her tone was syrupy, practiced. "Can we please talk?" she asked. "I think we both let this get way out of hand." I almost laughed at that. We let this get out of hand. I stepped aside and let her in, but I didn't offer her a seat. I didn't offer her a drink. She stood there, confused, probably calculating which version of me she was dealing with. I gave her nothing. She looked around. Her eyes landed on the cleared shelf, the empty frame where our wedding photo used to be. She didn't say anything, but her jaw clenched. Then, with a sigh like she was doing the mature thing, she said, "Look, Elliot, I know I crossed a line, but you're being vindictive now." I said nothing. She continued, "Yes, I went to Cody's. I stayed late. But that doesn't mean anything happened. You're making it a bigger deal than it was. It was just one stupid night." I finally spoke. "You didn't just go to a party. You planned it. You told your sister you wanted me to suffer." Her face twisted for half a second. The mask slipped. She realized I knew too much. Her hand reached for her purse, fidgeting. "Kendra had no right to tell you that. She's always been dramatic. You know how she is. She wasn't the one making out with Cody in his kitchen, Madison. She wasn't the one whose lap you sat on at 2 a.m. She wasn't the one posting cryptic quotes about freedom and letting go days before all of this happened. That's when the performance cracked completely. She dropped the act like it was too heavy to carry. Fine, she snapped. Yes, I wanted to shake you up. You've been sleepwalking through this marriage for over a year. You never fight for me. You never challenge me. I needed to see if you even still cared. That was the excuse. That was the justification. That my failure to fight for her somehow gave her the right to test my love with someone else's bed. You wanted me to fight for you? I asked, finally letting the anger in my voice show. You wanted me to be jealous, broken, desperate? Madison, I stayed up all night wondering if you were alive. I stared at the wall for hours thinking maybe you got in an accident. I blamed myself. I checked hospitals. I checked the news. I nearly called your parents. And the whole time, you were sipping wine with your ex and refreshing Instagram. She started to speak again, but I cut her off. You didn't want a husband. You wanted an audience. And I'm done clapping for the show. She stood still, stunned. I walked to the hall closet, grabbed the same suitcase I'd packed earlier, and this time placed it by her feet without a word. The message was clear. She looked at it, then at me, like she was waiting for some last-minute backpedal. But it never came. I watched her pick up the handle with trembling fingers, and for the first time since this mess started, she looked scared. Not angry, not smug, just scared, like someone realizing they pushed one game too far and lost the only person who still saw their humanity beneath the chaos. As she opened the door to leave, she turned back and whispered, "You'll regret this." But the truth is, I already had, long before she walked out the night of that party. The moment the door closed behind her, I didn't collapse like I expected to. I didn't cry. I didn't sink to the floor in some dramatic heap like the man I'd been just a few nights earlier. Instead, I stood completely still in the middle of our living room. No, my living room now, and felt something I hadn't in months. Complete, terrifying clarity. She thought I'd regret it, that I'd break, that I'd chase. But all I could think about was how easily she had crossed every line while assuming I wouldn't even notice. And that made me realize something else. If she'd gone that far, what else had she done while I was too busy blaming myself for the cracks she'd carved into our marriage? So I opened the drawer in her desk, not the one she used for bills or planner stickers or half-finished grocery lists. The locked one, the one she kept her old files in. She always told me it just had tax documents, boring adult stuff. But Madison was careless with digital things. She once used the same password for everything, our anniversary date. It opened on the first try. Inside, there was a small brown folder, thinner than I expected. Not full of paperwork, not full of bills. Just a few sheets. The first was a printout from a private email account I didn't recognize. Messages back and forth between her and someone saved only as R. From the tone, it wasn't Cody. This person was more careful, more deliberate. They wrote like someone who had been involved for a while. The most recent message read, "If he finds out, you know this changes everything. You sure you're ready for that?" Her reply, "He still thinks he's the reason I'm distant. It's easier that way." I sat down slowly. Cold. Hollow. She had someone else. Not Cody. Not a one-time mistake. Someone ongoing. Someone who thought I might eventually discover them. Someone she called by a single letter because even in her hidden little world, she didn't trust herself not to slip. The next page was a reservation confirmation. A trip. 2 tickets. 1 week in Sedona. Booked 2 months ago. The departure date? The week of our anniversary. She'd told me she wanted to take a solo trip to reflect. I remember actually encouraging it, thinking maybe time apart would help us reconnect. She had planned to spend our anniversary with another man. I didn't even feel angry anymore. Just detached. Like I was watching my life from outside my own body. And that's probably the only reason I didn't destroy the folder right then and there. Because a new part of me had started forming, quiet, strategic, steady. This wasn't about making a scene. This wasn't about screaming or slamming doors or blowing up her life in some public meltdown. No, this would be quiet, precise, controlled, the same way she'd been erasing me behind the scenes. Now it was my turn, so I pulled out my laptop, logged into our shared cloud, downloaded every file, every receipt, every calendar sync. I made a timeline of where she'd been, what she'd spent, who she'd been messaging. And then I did something I hadn't even thought of doing until that exact moment. I printed everything. I placed it all neatly in a manila envelope. And I didn't address it to Madison. I addressed it to her employer. Because that wasn't just some random man. He was her direct supervisor. And their company had a very public, very strict anti-fraternization policy, especially when it came to senior staff dating subordinates. Madison wanted me to regret pushing her away. She was about to find out what regret really felt like. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken. Not anymore. The grief had burned itself out and left something colder behind. Purpose. That's what it was. Not revenge. Not rage. Just quiet, focused purpose. By the time the sun rose, the envelope was sealed. Inside, the full truth, backed up with timestamps, screenshots, itinerary printouts, and email chains that left no room for denial. I didn't write a note. I didn't need to. I let the paper speak for itself. And the address on the front? It wasn't Madison's. It was the head of HR at her company, a firm that prided itself on a zero-tolerance policy when it came to workplace relationships involving power dynamics. I sent it by courier. And then I waited. It didn't take long. By noon, Madison called me 4 times. I didn't answer. She didn't leave voicemails either. She knew better than to put anything in writing now. At 3:47 p.m., I got a single text. What the hell did you do? I didn't reply. I went for a walk instead. The air felt different. Lighter. Colder. Free. For once, I wasn't walking around wondering what I did wrong. I was walking away from what she had done wrong and watching the consequences catch up to her at the exact pace she deserved. That evening, her sister Kendra called again. Madison's spiraling, she said, voice low. She got pulled into a mandatory meeting and came out pale as a ghost. She said someone sent HR a folder. She's freaking out, Elliot. I didn't deny it. I didn't confirm it either. I just said, she wanted to remind me how it felt to lose. I'm returning the favor. Kendra was silent for a few seconds. Then she said something I didn't expect. Good. Turns out Madison had burned more bridges than I knew. Kendra said she'd been covering for her sister for months, making excuses, softening the fallout, lying to their parents. She treats everyone like they're disposable. I didn't think you'd ever stand up to her, she said. But I'm glad you finally did. That hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I thought I was the weak one. The pushover. The guy who didn't have the strength to say no, to draw a line, to make a stand. But maybe I wasn't weak. Maybe I was just too loyal to someone who didn't deserve it. Madison showed up at the house the next day. No suitcase. No apology. Just a hurricane of emotion barely held together by lipstick and pride. She banged on the door like she owned the place, shouting my name like we were in the middle of some romantic drama. I didn't open it. I watched her through the security camera, hair a mess, pacing back and forth, shouting that we needed to fix this before it got worse. I almost laughed. Worse for who? She left after 20 minutes. But not before screaming, "You think you've won? This isn't over." And maybe she was right. Maybe it wasn't over. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I got to decide what came next. And I already knew. Because that trip she booked with the one she thought I'd never discover, I found a way to use it. Madison didn't show up again after that last outburst. Maybe someone at her job advised her to lay low. Maybe she finally realized that the version of me she used to manipulate wasn't picking up the phone anymore. Either way, the silence that followed wasn't just peaceful, it was healing. The fallout from the HR report hit fast. Her company launched an internal review, and I didn't need to be updated to know what came of it. A few weeks later, I got a short, bitter text from her. "Hope you're happy. I lost everything." She was wrong, though. I wasn't happy that she lost anything. I was just relieved to finally be done losing myself. After that, I started cleaning up what was left behind. I canceled the couple's therapy appointments she used to skip. I sold the anniversary trip reservations she'd lied about. I moved her remaining things into storage and had them delivered. No drama, no confrontation, just a receipt and a locked unit in her name. Closure in a box. But the real turning point came 2 months later. I was at a bookstore, somewhere she'd never want to be, ironically, when I struck up a random conversation with a woman at the cafe counter. Her name was Laura. She was soft-spoken, sharp, sarcastic in a way that didn't feel cruel. We laughed about how the espresso tasted like burnt rubber and ended up talking for over an hour. I didn't mention Madison. I didn't overshare. For once, I wasn't just a broken man dumping pain on someone else. I was just present. Myself. Unfiltered. Unafraid. Over the next few weeks, Laura and I saw more of each other. There were no games, no ghosting, no cold shoulders disguised as space. It was easy in the way real things are. Gentle, honest. She knew I was still healing, and she didn't rush it. One night, we sat on my porch drinking tea, and she asked me, if you could go back and undo everything, your marriage, all of it, would you? I thought about it. Then I said, no, because I would have stayed asleep forever if she hadn't burned the house down. Laura smiled. And now, I said, I get to rebuild it. But this time, I get to choose who walks through the door. And that was it. No grand revenge. No fire and fury. Just a man who finally stopped apologizing for loving the wrong person and started living for himself again. So, to anyone out there stuck in that same quiet hell, waiting for someone to change or notice or care, stop waiting. They already made their choice. Now it's time to make yours. Because sometimes the best way to win is to simply walk away and never look back.